Now, tomorrow marks International Volunteer Day that commemorates the contribution that these services make in society. This year's commemorations are under the theme Solidarity Through Volunteering. Well, for more, we're joined now by Donne Cameron from the Voluntary Service Overseas International. Thank you very much for your time this morning, Donne. Maybe just tell us a little bit about the importance of doing voluntary work. We are living in times where people are extremely busy trying to make ends meet and the like. And so many of us don't get the opportunity, but it is a crucial service to offer in any sector if you can.
Yeah, thanks so much, and thanks for the opportunity to speak today. Tomorrow marks a day where we are able to really recognize the contribution of over 1 billion volunteers around the world who contribute to their society through volunteering. VSO, we've been doing volunteering for 60 years, and I think what we're most proud of is how we have contributed to the evolution of volunteering, not just as a philanthropic activity, which is how many of us think about it, painting a school or, spending some time perhaps with young children, but actually as a really profound contribution to strengthening society, to helping people find their voice, to become more involved in the decisions that affect their lives, and to be able to really strengthen the social fabric that all of us are a part of.
Currently, just over the last 2 years, given the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russian invasion and other big events that have rocked the world, what would you say are some of the biggest sectors of society that are in desperate need of voluntary services?
So what we have found is that one of the biggest areas where people can really contribute as volunteers, and many people do this without even recognizing that they're volunteering, is really in holding duty bearers, whether that's government or the private sector or others, to account for the decisions that they're making and the access that everybody has to services. So one of the things that we've discovered about volunteering is that, unlike many other sectors, it enables us to really reach the most marginalized and vulnerable people in society. It brings them into the systems, helps them to get access to services. So we have seen this in the areas of education, in the area of health, in the area of livelihoods. We're seeing a huge amount of voluntary action now around climate change, people really stepping forward into the space, demanding change from governments, demanding change from the private sector, and really helping to create a global movement, a kind of global citizen movement around the issues that really affect all of our lives.
And then I suppose one of the big or key issues around voluntary work is that the resources need to be there for volunteers to conduct whatever service they need to. Yes. So those partnerships between government and related stakeholders are also quite important, aren't they?
Yes, partnerships is absolutely key. So whether you're working with government or, again, the private sector or with civil society, building really strong partnerships that are able to leverage resources, are able to provide support to volunteers, are able to make sure that volunteers and those that they serve are safe in the spaces where we're working with them, does require a great deal of resource. So unlike, again, what people might traditionally think of volunteering as a kind of free activity, actually, there's a lot that you have to really think about to make sure that volunteering is responsible, that it's impactful, that it actually really contributes to positive changes in the lives of those whom we're working with through voluntary action. And so, we've seen many governments around the world who support volunteering. We're particularly seeing a growth in support for youth volunteering. So right across Africa, we're working with the African Union around setting volunteering standards for many of the governments and other organizations who really want to leverage this incredible resource that we have in young people who want to change the world they're a part of. They want to be part of creating the future, and they're willing to give their time and their passion to volunteering and to be able to make those changes. So there's an enormous effort around the world. And those 1 billion volunteers are largely unrecognized, really, except, interestingly, through COVID. Then we realized how important it is that people are supported to be able to volunteer, how important volunteers are in bringing people together, in being able to develop long-term solutions, in meeting the immediate needs of people when we're in crisis. So we're continuing to call on governments, on donors, to really think about how they might support really responsible and impactful volunteering going forward. We're learning many lessons about what it takes to do impactful volunteering that results in sustainable outcomes for marginalized and vulnerable people. We know that we need to bring different perspectives together to be able to come up with innovative ideas, to be able to really change the lives of people around. We really call in in International Volunteer Day and every other day of the year, for people to really come behind and recognize volunteering as a really crucial component in building strong societies and indeed in reaching the Sustainable Development Goals.
You mentioned something very important in your answer there, Donne, and I wanted us to engage a little bit on it, the involvement of youth and them increasingly becoming an important part of the fold of volunteers around the world. How do we encourage or how do we create a bigger appetite for more and more young people to come on board to make use of these services, especially those who don't get into institutions of higher learning, who can't find jobs, to know that there are opportunities for them to contribute to society and the economy without being necessarily at a university or in a job as a form of immediate service to any society?
And, you know, one of our instincts is that it's, you know, young people who are sort of formally in institutions, other places that do most of the volunteering. But actually, in our experience, it's often people who are caught in that space where they're unable to access resources, or they're unable to access services that others are, who are most passionate, actually, about making the change and volunteering. So what we have really discovered is that the most important thing with young people is not actually to there's no need really to feed the passion. The passion exists. What you have to do is create a space where young people can express that and take positive steps forward in actively volunteering. One of the most important things for young people, of course, is to find other like-minded young people who they can join with. So young people tend to volunteer collectively. They like the space in which they can connect with each other, they can learn from one another, and then they can take collective action together. So we've had young people doing some incredible things, meeting with their governments around climate change. We've had young people doing research around employment and employability in their communities, and then taking that information, that research, to local authorities and working with them on a plan to be able to address unemployment in their spaces. So there are so many ways in which young people can really contribute, building up each other, and then also, you know, finding their voice and finding the space in which they can connect with each other. So there are many organizations here in South Africa, across Africa and in other countries that are fostering and are calling upon young people. It takes a little bit of research to do that, to kind of reach out. But I would really encourage young people to just talk to one another, start connecting, if necessary, form their own spaces. But our responsibility as organizations that foster and encourage and volunteer is really to create that space, create the networks, enable young people to connect to one another, and really just give them a forum and a platform in which they can express their needs and their aspirations and their commitment actually to the future.
Thank you so much for those wonderful insights, Donne. That is Donne Cameron from VSO International, talking to us about the International Volunteer Day tomorrow and really just the importance of providing that service in your society.